Hi everyone, welcome to Tales of Dread. On May 24, 1970, the Soviet Union started a project that would become known as the coldest super-deep borehole. Even though it has been closed for a long time, the hole still exists and is about 40,000 feet deep. Whether it was for research or some other reason, Russia has dug deeper than it should have in the past, and several holes can still be found today. Going down one of these holes in the Russian wilderness without any protection is the worst thing I've ever done. A year ago, for work, I had to go to a small fishing village in Siberia, Russia. There are no more than 200 people living there, and most of them fish or hunt. I had been in strange situations before because I was a scientist. I'm a geologist, but that doesn't matter for the story. What does matter is that I've worked in search and rescue back in the United States. My Russian skills weren't very good. And only 2 people in the village besides my crew spoke English. It was hard, to say the least. However, they were some of the nicest people I've ever met, and they had the right attitude and were willing to share a bottle of vodka. I especially liked being with the village police officer, who was the only one who could speak at least a little bit of English. His job was mostly to drive people home after they had had too much to drink, but we often joined them and didn't stop. We quickly became friends, and we had a good time in such a strange place far from civilization. At least, we did until the 9th month of our deployment, when a 7-year-old girl from the area went missing. Her name was Darla, and she and her friends had been playing around an old, empty building that most people thought was a silo from the Soviet era. And the whole building had been locked up for nearly 40 years and had been forgotten. On that day, the kids liked to hang out in that area a lot. On the side that was open, the doors were broken, revealing a large room full of old tools and a big dark hole in the middle. And the whole thing was about 50 feet across, but no one knew how deep it went. In the middle of the whole thing is a simple raised platform that looks like it could be used to lower mines. All that could be seen was a bottomless pit of darkness into which Daria had fallen. I knew in my heart right away that the fold would kill her, even if there was a pool of water at the bottom of the fall. After Darian fell into the hole, the other kids said she had gotten out on her own, which gave the scared mother false hope. It was the first time I saw Brahim work officially on a rescue plan. Calling for help from the government so far away was a hopeless task, because even if they sent help, it would arrive too late. I volunteered because I had some experience in that field and knew how to give basic first aid. One of my co-workers, Stanley, also volunteered. While the mechanics tried to fix the old machines, including the elevator, I put a sinker on the line and measured how deep the water was. Even though the longest ropes added together measure almost 1,000 feet after a couple of hours, the line wasn't long enough to figure out where the bottom was. The elevator was ready, but they had found some kind of protective suits. Based on the few documents that were found in the building, there was a lot of pressure in the air, and it got as hot as 150 F. I knew then that all we would find was the body of a little girl, whose family would have to bury her. If you're ready, go to. The team asked us, but the suits didn't fit well on our not very fit bodies and were shaped in some places. I didn't know that could happen. We went in through the door on the left, which was guarded by a rusty metal cage with lots of holes. Only one walkie-talkie was given to us so we could talk to people on the surface, along with a few old flashlights. We're all set. Listener Stanley said that as the elevator platform went down, the gears that moved it began to churn. The room was filled with clunky sounds. Straight down. In the elevator, there was a small screen with numbers that showed how deep you were. It went at a rate of no more than a foot per second, which was painfully slow. But it was clear that the mood was about to change. We descended 100 feet. We are already deep in darkness. The weak flashlights we had brought with us didn't really help much. You think it's dark here? Wait until you see what the winter in the village is like. Don't make me or Stanley happy. Both end with a laugh. Would you please check to see if the radio works for him? I asked. It's true. He told her not to worry. 500 feet. The walkie-talkie went off for the first time since we started going down almost 10 minutes ago. And the Russian was hard to understand for someone like me, who didn't know the language. What did that person do? I asked. Just now, they asked us how deep we are. Why can't we hear what they're saying? Stanley asked, are we only 500 feet down? Yeah, something weird is going on here, he said. Aside from the electrical hum of the old elevator and the sound of him nervously shifting his weight while standing, there was no other sound. People talking just above us couldn't be heard. Very strange. But he thought to himself that something didn't seem right about Fahim. Guys, I've never seen him so worried before. Is it just me, or is this place getting really hot? Yeah, I'm scared, and I already answered. 1,000 feet. Palm. A guide. In the dust below, a soft voice cried out. What did you hear? What did I ask? Someone below called for help. Nothing is going on. I put my finger to my lips and made a sign for quiet while I listened carefully. The voice spoke to me again. Help. It was the same voice, but a bit louder. It happened again. Yes, I did hear it, but he told me to wait. They asked for assistance? Yes, of course you heard it too. It was in English, though. It wasn't unusual for the kids to learn a word or two of English while they were there. This wasn't that, though. A young girl had no reason to know that word. Not in a small village in Siberia did Vaccine call out for the voice, but no one answered. Damn it! Can we make this move more quickly? 4,000 feet took more than an hour. We could not yet see the bottom. We hadn't heard the voice in a long time, and the heat had given us a headache that hurt like hell. If someone at the bottom had really called out, we would have been there already. Guys, there's a light. But human adults, what do you want to say? The bottom has light. Look, he jumped up and down quickly and pointed down into the darkness. Stanley, there's nothing there for him. Sad. Why don't you see it? It shines so much. I took a quick look at Stanley and was confused. My first thought was that he was going crazy because it was so hot and dark and no one had said a word to him until he told us about the lion. The elevator was going down, but our moods were going down much faster. On top of that, my headache came out of nowhere and was almost killing me. In the process, the elevator stopped shaking so hard. It knocked me right to the ground, and I passed out right away. When I went back to it after a few seconds, Stanley was lying down next to me, but Stan was nowhere to be found. Do you feel okay? I gave you a shoulder shake. As he sat back up, he agreed. What the hell is going on? Man, I don't know, but Fahim has left? What? He went where? I'm not sure. He just vanished. We looked around and saw that there was no way out of the elevator. There were a few holes in the metal cage around us, but a big man like Fahim couldn't get through them. I found the walkie-talkie. Stanley suggested that you call the surface. He tried to get help. But the only answer was silence. We tried to call for him, but he was already far away. The elevator started to go down toward Ghana. Stanley begged, "Let's go back up." I used the panel to click a few buttons. How the controls are broken, only the ones on the surface work. He started yelling at the people on top to bring us down. But we both knew that there was no way they could hear us from 10,000 feet up. To get that deep, it had taken more than 4 hours. The heat is getting worse with every step down, and a few people have already passed out from lack of water. Why haven't they brought us back up yet, even though we brought plenty of water? Stanley asked, but his voice was weak. He was a lot older than I was, so the heat was making him get worse quickly. Stanley didn't answer. I don't know if it's even possible to be this far down. He fell asleep, but I'd like to have the strength to wake him up. I was about to lose consciousness for the 9th time. I woke up when I heard something that sounded like singing. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard in Russian, and I didn't know what it was about, but it was so calm and Stan. I called out as loud as I could, "Are you listening? Who's singing, Imam?" I was almost asleep. The darkness got brighter, and the singing got louder. I finally see the light. This is sad. The elevator came to a stop. Stan was gone again, and it was like he had vanished into thin air, but the light was still there. The warm, beautiful light. It started moving toward me, and the closer it got, the more at ease I felt. The closer it got, the lighter I felt, until all I could see was light. Then nothing happened. A hospital was where I woke up. A week later, I was found by 2 hunters in the middle of a forest in eastern Russia. I didn't have any proof of who I was or where I came from. Like they said, my story didn't make sense. Public records showed that there was no such hole, which didn't come as much of a surprise. But when I looked more closely, I found that the village where I had lived for most of the year wasn't even on the map. The ordeal was hard on my mind, and it left me with a few gaps in my memory. I can only remember a few phone numbers of my co-workers, and when I called them, all of their numbers were either disconnected or went to people who had nothing to do with them. After a long investigation, I was given an emergency travel document and told I could go back to the United States. My fingerprints matched some proof that I existed, which helped clear my name from criminal records. When I got back home, I found out that my house had been owned by someone else for at least 10 years. I didn't figure out what had happened for a long time. But some of the changes were too big to be just bad luck. Putting aside the changes I've gone through here on a personal level, even what I learned about world history doesn't match what I learned about geography. Even a whole continent is missing from the map, and denial is a very effective tool. It took me months to understand something that was both simple and complicated. This isn't the world I come from.